Hey everyone! Welcome back to Celebrity Scope, where we uncover the emotions, the secrets, and the moments that Hollywood doesn't want you to miss. Today's story is one that'll tug at your heartstrings. Kelly Ripa, yes, the always composed and radiant host, couldn't hold back tears after her husband Mark Consuelos revealed something so painful. It left the entire studio in stunned silence. Stay till the end because this story takes a turn no one saw coming. Let's dive right in. The bright lights of Live with Kelly and Mark filled the studio. Just like every other morning, Kelly Ripa, graceful, witty, and effortlessly charming, was laughing beside her husband and co-host, Mark Consuelos. But behind that laughter, behind the playful banter that fans adore, something was brewing. Something deeply personal that was about to surface live on air. That morning began like any other. Kelly cracked a joke about their kids. Mark teased her about her coffee obsession, and the audience clapped along. But just a few minutes into the show, viewers noticed something off about Mark's tone. It was softer, heavier. His usual sparkle seemed dimmed. When Kelly turned toward him, she saw that look, the kind that only a spouse can recognize. A mix of pain, love, and the weight of unspoken words. Mark took a deep breath. "There's something I've been meaning to share," he began, voice trembling slightly. The studio audience fell silent. Even Kelly, always quick with a witty comeback, stayed still. He continued, "Sometimes we think time will make certain things easier, but it doesn't. It just hides them." The words hit like thunder in the quiet room. Kelly looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly, unsure where he was going. "What are you talking about, honey?" she asked gently. Mark swallowed hard, then looked down. "I never told you this, not completely. But there was a point in my life before everything before us when I was really struggling. I was lost. I didn't think I'd ever find happiness again." The crowd shifted uneasily. Kelly blinked rapidly, confusion mixing with concern. "Wait, you mean before we met?" she asked, trying to smile, but her voice wavered. Mark nodded slowly. "Yeah, and it's something I've carried all these years. Something I've never forgiven myself for." The live cameras zoomed in on Kelly's face. Her trademark smile had faded completely. She looked shaken but patient, as if bracing herself. "Mark, what are you talking about?" Mark took another deep breath. "There was someone who needed me back then. Someone who reached out. And I wasn't there for them. I didn't pick up the phone when it mattered most. And a week later they were gone." The room froze. Kelly's jaw dropped slightly, tears forming at the corner of her eyes. She whispered, "Gone?" Mark nodded. "They took their own life. And I always wondered, if I had just picked up that call, would things have been different?" Kelly's hand flew to her mouth. She looked at him not just as a co-host, not even as a husband in that moment, but as someone seeing the depth of another's pain in real time. "Mark," she whispered, but her voice cracked before she could finish. The studio audience was dead silent. No laughter, no clapping. Just the heavy, raw sound of truth being spoken. Kelly leaned over, reached for his hand, and held it tightly. "You've carried that all these years?" He nodded. "Every day." Tears streamed down Kelly's face. "I had no idea," she said softly. "You never told me." Mark shook his head. "I didn't want to burden you. You've always been my light, my reason to move forward. But lately, seeing our kids growing up, seeing you every day on this show, I realized I couldn't keep pretending that I'd made peace with the past. Because I haven't." Kelly was visibly trembling now, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mark, you've carried that pain alone for decades." The emotion in the room was overwhelming. Crew members behind the camera were seen wiping away tears. One of the producers later revealed that the teleprompter was completely abandoned. Everything that followed was raw, unplanned, and heartbreakingly real. Kelly turned to him and said something that silenced the world watching. "You didn't lose that person, Mark. You just didn't know how much pain they were in. You can't blame yourself for that. None of us can." Mark tried to smile, but his eyes glistened. "I know, but I still feel like I failed." Kelly took his hand and held it to her heart. "Then let's stop pretending like you have to carry it alone." There was a long pause. The live audience erupted into a wave of quiet applause. Not the usual excitement-filled claps, but something gentler, more emotional. The camera panned across faces full of empathy. as Kelly wiped her tears and whispered, "You're allowed to heal too, Mark." And that's when something completely unexpected happened. Mark reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small worn photo, the edges frayed, the colors faded. "This was them," he said quietly. "I've kept it with me all these years." Kelly's breath caught. She took the photo into her trembling hands. "Oh my God," she murmured. "You've been carrying this the whole time?" Mark nodded again. "Every day, in every city, every show, every moment. It reminded me to never take connection for granted." Kelly couldn't stop crying. She looked straight into the camera, her voice breaking, and said, "If anyone out there is feeling lost, if you think no one cares, please reach out. There's always someone willing to listen. You are not alone." The audience stood up in a standing ovation. The cameras captured one of the most emotional live TV moments in recent memory. But the story didn't end there. After the show went off air, reports say Kelly and Mark stayed behind for nearly an hour. Crew members described the couple embracing, both visibly emotional. Kelly later confessed to a close friend that Mark's revelation shook her to her core. She said she'd never seen him so vulnerable, and it made her fall in love with him all over again. Later that evening, Kelly posted a cryptic message on her Instagram story. "Sometimes the ones who make you laugh the most carry the heaviest pain. Love deeply. Listen closely. Forgive freely." Fans flooded her comments with support. "We love you both," one wrote. "You two show what real love looks like," another added. The following morning, Live with Kelly and Mark opened with a softer tone. Kelly began by saying, "Yesterday wasn't an easy show, but it was a real one. And sometimes being real means being vulnerable. So thank you for letting us share that with you." Mark, sitting beside her, placed a hand over hers and smiled faintly. "Thank you for listening," he said to the audience, "because sometimes the hardest truths bring us closer." And then, in a moment that felt almost cinematic, Kelly surprised everyone. She pulled out a letter. "This," she said, "was written by someone who watched yesterday's show. They said Mark's story made them decide not to give up. They said they reached out for help, and that maybe, just maybe, that moment on air saved their life." Mark's eyes filled with tears again. He looked down, shaking his head in disbelief. That means everything." Kelly smiled through tears. "That's why we tell our stories, Mark. That's why we do what we do." The crowd stood up again, this time clapping louder than ever. The couple hugged tightly, whispering something only they could hear. By the end of the episode, the air felt different, lighter, yet filled with something profound. It wasn't just another celebrity talk show anymore. It was a moment of truth, of healing, of love. And while many viewers tuned in expecting laughter and light-hearted banter, what they got instead was a powerful reminder that even the strongest among us have scars, and sometimes, sharing them is the bravest thing we can do. In the days that followed, the internet exploded with reactions. Fans praised Kelly for her compassion, and Mark for his bravery. Hashtags like #WeLoveKelly and Mark and #YourNotAlone trended for hours. One fan wrote, "They've been married for over 2 decades and still show what unconditional love looks like. This is what real partnership means." Another said, "That moment between Kelly and Mark will stay with me forever. It was real, raw, and beautifully human." And as for Kelly and Mark, they've always been a symbol of fun, laughter, and chemistry on screen. But now they've become something more. They've become a reminder that love isn't about perfection. It's about holding someone through their pain, even when it catches you off guard, even when it breaks your heart a little in the process. Because in the end, it wasn't the laughter, the fame, or the show that defined them. It was that moment of truth, the tears, and the quiet promise to never let each other face the darkness alone again. What an emotional roller coaster. Kelly and Mark just proved that even the brightest smiles can hide the deepest pain, and that love can heal what silence can't. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more powerful Hollywood stories that show the real side of fame. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and remember, everyone has a story worth hearing.